Why are Brighton so bad defensively this season? We're going to get into that today. Welcome to Seagulls Central. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As we always say, the fastest growing, the most exciting, the most instant, the most in-depth Brighton Hove Albion channel out there on social media. If you're looking for your daily, every couple of days hit of Brighton Hove Albion content, this is the place to be. Tell your mates, put it in your group chats, let all your Brighton fan mates know that this is the place to be. I'm thankful to you for coming back to this channel. I want to say a quick one before we get into this. 3,000 subscribers, we hit that. We ticked over that milestone over the weekend, just after. I think it was actually just before I put the Man United video out, but I didn't really notice it until after I published the video. So thank you. If you're one of the 3,000 people who have subscribed to this YouTube channel, thank you very much. It honestly means more than I can kind of verbalize in a couple of sentences. I know I say it a lot, and I know it probably sounds a bit annoying, but thank you very much. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't already, and you find yourself coming back, or you enjoyed the videos, or this is even your first one, hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on. It means you will never, ever miss a video. You'll be the first, you'll be the fastest to all of this content. And you'll be part of a brilliant community of Brighton fans who love getting into a bit of debate. And I would like to think, now listen, I'll get into it, I was reading some of the comments and have been noticing some of the comments over the last couple of weeks, talking about kind of people's opinions of maybe me being a little bit negative, maybe. And then in the last kind of video, a couple of people saying, actually, finally, I agree with you, Adam. I would like to think that the comments I have to make aren't overly positive, aren't overly negative. I think I try and be as fair as I can. I hate the phrase, I just say it how it is, because I find the people who say those kind of sentences are just, I find it a very irritating kind of sentence to say. But I do feel like I say it as I see it. I don't try and dress it up as overly negative or overly positive. So I hope today, I know it might feel like quite a negative tone that this video is kind of themed around, but I think once we get into it, I'm going to try and deal in facts, I'm going to try and deal in stats, I'm going to try and talk around where Brighton can go, and I'll obviously impart my judgment along the way. So let's get into it. Brighton's kind of frailties defensively this season. Brighton are quite a poor defensive side, it seems, and it seems like we've kind of really been that in the last year, since Fabian Hurzeler came in. I mean, I think we can be fair to Hurzeler and say we've not been a great defensive side for 2 or 3 years. I think under Potter, to be fair to him, while we weren't a flourishing goal-scoring side, we were a pretty decent defensive side. We might not score loads of goals, we might not be able to win the games, but most of the time, we'll make a game of it and we'll be able to keep people out and we'll make it difficult. It'll be hard to beat Brighton, was kind of the way I felt around Brighton between that kind of 2019 to 2022 era. You come into the De Zerbi side and, okay, you sacrifice all the defensive clean sheets and you kind of say, you know what, we're going to score loads of goals and win games that way. It's fair enough. I kind of got the sense that Fabian Hurzeler was a bit more of a pragmatist and was a bit more of a resolute kind of manager who maybe focused on clean sheets a little bit more and kind of defensive solidity more so than De Zerbi. I remember he gave an interview. In fact, I think he was speaking to the fan advisory board. There was a kind of video behind the scenes where he was chatting to the fan advisory board, and one of the questions they asked him was, would you rather win a game kind of 4-3 or kind of 1-0? And he said 1-0, and I thought that kind of shaped the manager we were going to get. Now, the stats don't really back it up, and I think there are a few things. I think you can look at personnel. I think you can look at the system, quote unquote. I think that's up for debate, whether there is a system. You can look at the manager, you look at the players, you can look at the kind of system. And you can look at the long-term trends. Let me list out a couple of stats here. The first one is kind of really just around this season. Brighton are yet to keep a clean sheet this season. And the only other sides not to keep a clean sheet yet this season are Forest and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Two sides who, in their own right, are having pretty poor season. I mean, think about Wolverhampton Wanderers, the only side in the top 4 divisions in English football to not win a game yet. And Nottingham Forest, apart from the first couple of games, 1 or 2 games, it's been a bit of a shambles for them. Famously under Ange Postecoglou, not a very good defensive side. I think it is a concern. I think if Brighton want to finish top 8, top 7, top 6, which I think going into the start of the season probably was the ambition set out by the players, the manager, the board, you can't be kind of 9 games into a Premier League season and not have kept a clean sheet yet and not looking like you can keep a clean sheet. and having players in the side who look suspect defensively, having multiple players who look suspect defensively. And I think there are a lot of conversations around the defence and the personnel being played in defence, which are still up for debate, which I don't think you kind of want if you're a side who are really looking to push on to that 6th, 7th, 8th. It feels like a real conversation that we're having a lot. Only 4 teams in the Premier League have conceded more goals than Brighton. All of them are relegation candidates. Wolves, Forest, I think Burnley's one of them as well, and there's West Ham United as well. I think before yesterday, the kickoffs on Sunday, the 2 p.m s and the 4 p.m s, before those games, only West Ham and Forest had conceded more goals than Brighton. And then Burnley went and had a bit of a goal fest, and they conceded a couple. But it's not great, is it? We're looking like quite a poor defensive side. Now, what is it? What is it? What do you think it is? I'd love to know what you think it is. If you have an idea, let me know in the comments. I've got a few ideas. I think there's a simplistic thing you can say, which is like, look, drop this player, drop that player, drop Baleba, drop Dunk, mix it up, get a proper right back, get a proper left back in, stop playing wing backs. You can go kind of basic and route one. I think there is an argument around that. I think, I'm going to do a video on it later in the week around Baleba and what we do around him and how you solve a problem like Baleba. Is he someone who needs to be dropped? He looks like a player, particularly against Man United, who was doing nothing for us defensively, losing the ball a lot, getting out muscled, that kind of traditional Baleba style of being able to nip in and win balls and be aggressive. We just haven't seen any of it from. And I also think Van Hecke and Dunk in the main this season have been poor. I touched on it in my last video, and I've spoken about Dunk before, and I find it a difficult one to talk about. But I'm gonna kind of try and get into it now. I do think it is time that we see someone else at centre half. You think about the calibre of player that we've got on the bench in terms of central defenders. Livio Biscagli, back-to-back Eredivisie winner, captain at PSV, 27 years old, in the prime of his career. On the flip side, you've got a brilliant prospect in Coppola. I think it is a shame that we're not seeing them at all. Coppola, we're seeing him for 5 minutes at the end against Newcastle. I think we saw him against, was it Fulham or Man City, when we're trying to kind of cling on to a result for 5 minutes at the end and just defend a couple of corners and set pieces. They're putting in good performances in the Cup. I'm not saying they should both be starting, but I think it feels annoying and it feels frustrating that Fabian Hurzeler is so rigid and so set in his ways in terms of the players he plays. Okay, maybe his hand's been forced in terms of Veltman being out, having to play Weaver at right back, something that maybe isn't the ideal situation, but it seems like it's something he really wants to do. But there's been no kind of sense that Dunk or Van Hecke, not that maybe Van Hecke would be the one, it probably would be Dunk, but there's no sense that either of them would ever be dropped, or any kind of recognition that the centre-back pairing kind of isn't serving Brighton at the minute. We talk about Lewis Dunk, this stat here. Brighton have kept Lewis Dunk in the last 53 weeks has only been in the starting 11 for 2 clean sheets in those 53 weeks. That's pretty damning, isn't it? So obviously he missed a couple of games. Yeah, there was a period last season where Igor and Webster had to play together. I think they might have kept a clean sheet or 2. In the 53 weeks that have gone, in all the games that Lewis Dunk has played in that time, only 2 clean sheets have been made. And out of those 53 weeks, he's probably played, at least 47, 48 of the 53 of those match weeks. That's poor. That's really poor. To have not kept a clean sheet this season, I think something needs to change. Something needs to change. Brighton are a very effective pressing side. Brighton, I think, in attack actually look pretty decent. We have the quality. I think it's defence. It's the midfield. When someone like Baleba isn't performing, who do we have as that enforcer to protect Dunk and Van Hecke? Is Lewis Dunk a bit wooden? Is he a bit... I said it on Saturday after the Man United game. I think there are moments while he does look very composed at times, and the chest back to the keeper and the kind of organisation. You see it when you watch it live. You see it. He's offering something. There is no doubt about it, which is why I do think in a way it would be quite a harsh move to do to drop Lewis Dunk. But I think if we didn't have the options on the bench, if we were still turning to the bench in difficult moments and seeing Igor sat there or Adam Webster sat there, it might be a less compelling case to make that change. I think when you have a left-footed centre-half who has such pedigree, Olivia Biscagli must be sat there thinking, what the hell is going on? How can I not get a minute? Okay, Tommy Watson's had to bide his time. Costu, Simas are having to bide their time. But for Biscagli to get nothing, let's just see. I think when we've seen him in the cup, it's a different level of opposition. I accept that, but you heard him all game, screaming, shouting. You heard him organising the defence. You heard the impact he was having on his teammates. He's an organiser. He's a leader. But does Fabian Hurzeler have I don't want to say balls, because I don't think it's as simple as that, but the understanding, the bravery, the courage in his convictions, the real conviction in the feeling that we might have. I don't think that Fabian Hurzeler has that same feeling of conviction around the defence. It seems like it's something where he's very prepared to stick with it. I would make that change. And I would be very, very... I won't be surprised, because I think he will keep with both Dunk and Van Hecke as a centre-half pairing, but I think something needs to change. Does it mean going to a back three? Does it mean just changing one player? Does it mean dropping Baleba for a few games and trying to mix things up a little bit? Does it mean, as soon as Joel Veltman's back fighting fit, bringing Weaver into midfield to, maybe go into a three in midfield with Weaver, Ayari, Gomez, something like that, even when Hinshelwood's back, working in a midfield three like that, but where Weaver can be the defensive midfielder as he was brought in to be. I think Baleba probably does need to be dropped, doesn't he? But is that going to affect us defensively? Is that going to improve us defensively? I don't know. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Brighton aren't going to be able to achieve their ambitions of European football with this defensive record. Yes, okay, under De Zerbi, we were a little bit more mental and hectic when it came to conceding goals and scoring goals, and it was a bit more about one than the other, i.e. more about attacking. But we were still pretty resolute. I don't have the stats to hand, but I would imagine kind of what we were predicted to get by the end of this season, we're probably on track to concede more goals than we were in that season. You got to have an element of kind of solidity in the way you play. And we just don't seem to have that right now. And my main concern is the fact that there seems to be no awareness or willingness to comment on the poor defensive form or I haven't really heard any questions to Fabian Hurzeler about changing things up at the back by the journalists who attend the news conferences. You don't really hear that being a debate, a conversation that's being had. And I know it's a difficult one because you're talking about a club legend in Lewis Dunk, or you're talking about getting the manager to change his system. And these are difficult questions to ask, but I do feel like they're the questions that need to be asked. And it has felt like after games, Fabian Hurzeler's kind of tone and his message has often been, look, there have been positives. We've played well. We've been unlucky. Man United, I think, was the first example of where we'd actually heard him properly criticise, at least this season, properly criticise the performance and say that things weren't good enough. Yeah, look, there were lots of individual mistakes in this game. I'm trying to pull things out, go a bit more macro and talk about a bit more of a wider trend around why Brighton are playing the way they are. I think it's very, very concerning. What would I do? I think for Leeds, I would bring in Olivier Biscagli. I would do it. I think he brings experience. I think he brings a natural left-sided play. It's a massive, massive call. And you can't just drop your captain for one game. I understand that. So I think if someone's going to do it, if Fabian Hurzeler is going to do it, if I were in the position to do it, it's a big decision because you can't just do it for one game. You can't just change it. Once you drop your captain, you've kind of dropped him. And I've said it before, maybe an easier way to do it would be to try and move to a back three and kind of play Dunk in the middle and then bring in another defender. And that's trying to kind of solidify things. It gives us a bit of an option. It then maybe makes us easier in 6 months' time to go back to a back two. And then you kind of, see who's done better and you keep that player in. It means more players can be mixed up. You could try Coppoli, you could try Biscagli, you could try different options. It's tough. It's really tough. But Brighton are a very, very poor defensive side right now. And I don't think you can accuse anyone of being too negative. I don't think you can accuse anyone of anything really around this conversation. Brighton are a poor defensive side right now. And the stats are there to back it up. Can they turn around? Of course they can. Do they have the players to do it? Yes, they do. Is it made a little bit harder by maybe not having the most defensive options at kind of left back and right back? Probably. Maxim de Kuyper isn't a stalwart of defence in the way that maybe we have had in the past, and Ferdi Kadioglu certainly isn't either. Veltman being out makes it a little bit more difficult. Weaver, while he does have that ability to come inside and play in midfield, it makes it a little bit easier. It's a bit more versatile for Brighton. And it helps us play out a little bit more, provides us with a bit more of a different tactical option. It also makes it harder because he just simply isn't a right back. And it is like having a midfielder at right back. I don't know. I think changes need to be made, and I'll be really intrigued to see what we do. Wednesday night against Arsenal, we're going to see Pascagli, we're going to see Coppola, we're going to see different options. So will that transfer into the weekend? I wouldn't hold your breath, I guess. I feel like we probably won't see them on the weekend. I think it will be as you were, and probably Belabor will start as well. So it will be quite frustrating. But let me know, why do you think Brighton is such a poor defensive side this season? Why do you think Brighton haven't conceded, haven't kept a clean sheet this season? Why do you think Brighton have conceded the fourth most goals in the Premier League? In fact, I don't even think it is fourth. I think they're joint fourth. It's like, the second most goals in the Premier League this season. Why are we so poor defensively? Is it the manager? Is it the system? Is it personnel? What would you change? And is it harsh? Can you drop Lewis Dunk? Or is this just the unspoken taboo that no one's allowed to talk about? And how would you do it? What's the right way to do it? Is there a correct way to drop Lewis Dunk? It's a difficult conversation to have, but doesn't need to be had. Thank you very much for watching this video and engaging with it. If you've got this far in the video, you find yourself coming back to the channel regularly, please hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on, get in the comments, hit the like button, and let me know what you think on this topic. I will see you in a couple of days' time to get through all the biggest Brighton Hove Albion news and deep dive into the biggest conversations around being a Brighton fan at the minute. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video, and as always, up the Albion.